So welcome to today's update video. You can see there's a lot. Looking at the vorticity map, there's a lot going on with an active interchop conversion, so I'll get to why later. I think it's pretty clear why. Here's a look at the satellite picture. Let's talk about this very quickly. This system has about air disturbed weather here. Has a 10% chance of development in the next 2 and 5 days. It's probably not going to amount to much. I mean, the Europeans and GFS have been off now on developing this. And if some stays south, it's possible the system could become a weak tropical storm. But this latest European one kind of brings it off into the stratoscenius clouds. I mean, this European one looked a little off. But I mean, I'll get to that one in a second. But if what this latest European one shows actually happens, this won't do much. And then of course, this is the area disturbed weather I was talking about. The models having bullish on a very broad system. It's kind of expected to be like that. I mean, they were previously sort of expecting 3 vorticities to develop and compete with each other from this broad area of disturbed weather. Not really showing any more in the results. Although the gold models are pretty fuzzy, I'll get to that in a second. And you can see here's a deep look at it. You can see there's appears to be some sort of span associated within the anti-shear. It's designated this broad area of low pressure in Vesta 94E. And you can see a well-defined center has appeared to form around 9 north, 103 west, and the strength of the system will partially depend, and the strength and especially traffic system will partially depend on where the system consolidates. Let's look at the GFS one, which actually was pretty simple and straightforward. The GFS has been launched onto this for days. You can see it develops. Hard to see what it develops. This system a little bit. It develops this system right here and then launches on somewhat and kind of keeps it a weak tropical storm. Then eventually develops a very potent hurricane as it drifts its way west. And starts to develop a system behind it. And you can see it has this Vesta 94E system becoming a very robust hurricane as it eventually is picked up. Even though the system brings it west, the system will probably be picked up by the upper level winds. The system becomes a very strong hurricane, and eventually we could obviously this model gets root, and then eventually the GFS develops a robust hurricane behind 94E, and then has another system behind that, and then has another system at the end of the 16-day run behind that system. So the GFS has, if you count the 10-10 system and 94E, so that's 2 systems. It has 3 systems behind, so it's 5 systems. And it kind of has a 6 starting to develop here. But in general, I see the 0C GFS one has 5 total tropical cyclones developing in the next 16 days. I mean, the UK Met's actually pretty similar to the 0Z one. It's similar to the 12 to the 12Z GFS. You can see it's obviously a very robust hurricane here. Kind of has a weakening system being pulled to the north by the upper level winds. That's the 10-10, and then the robust hurricane of 94, and the system developing behind it. This one is actually pretty sensible. And the 0Z European one. Oh, whoops. I'll go to the 0Z one. And the 0Z European runs pretty sensible. It develops this area of disturbed weather is what the ancient is a 10-10. It kind of slowly develops it. Doesn't really become too much. Then eventually develops 94E, and then has 94E moving west and has nears a weakness. Eventually at least tries to recurve the system out to sea without affecting the Hawaiian Islands. And then has a system behind it slowly consolidating and developing. And then has hints of another system behind that. So that's in pretty good agreement. However, the 12Z European one was pretty doozy. I am not sure if it was initialized correctly. I'll rant about that later. But here you can see, here's the system that the entity just highlighted. It develops its and kind of has it visually now. And then notice how there's no tropical cyclone behind it that would be Inverse 94E. And it's hard to tell what actually happens to Inverse 94E. Hard to tell what happens to Inverse 94E here. I mean, just because the system's originally originated around 100 degrees west, is it? And most global models move the system relatively slowly. I'll talk about this later, but you can tell something's off, but it's presumed, however, that it turns out being this system that's Inverse 94E, at least on this model. If the anchor is getting a 30% chance of development in 2 days and an 80% chance of development in 5 days. There's no float up on it yet, so I just showed you only those broad pictures of it. And as a result, in years 95, it doesn't really develop it too much. And then all of a sudden, by day 5, a new system's already in the picture. And I think it's a bit bullish and a bit too fast. And it's hard to say what this new system comes from. You can see here it appears on the GFS that the second system behind Inverse 94E is right around here. But the European seems to at least consolidate some of this stuff near the Gulf of Tonkin, the pack, along with that associated tropical wave, and that, it's kind of hard to tell, and I'll get to that in either. So what either does, it consolidates this tropical wave alongside with this system somehow, or B, the system was not initialized correctly at all, or C, it's initializing this tropical wave and as the system moving west with only 24-hour products readily out that can actually help me determine this. The only products that are really helpful in determining this are only 24 hours. That's only through Levi's tropical tidbit site, so it's hard to tell exactly what's going on. This makes this one lose a lot of credibility in my eyes. But nevertheless, it ends up developing both the 94E and the system behind it, has 94E moving pretty briskly and a bit further south. So you can see the GFS by around this point kind of has the system already starting to recover out to sea. And also has a system weaker than the system behind it, which does not make a lot of sense to me, given that these convectively coupled Kelvin waves are moving from east to west. So I mean, the system's gonna, and I realize, I may not be 100% right, because I know the waters up here are a little bit warmer than the waters out here, but I'm not sure how much of a difference that would make in this instance, given the relatively close apart these two systems are. I mean, there's not a Fort Wire interaction, most likely, because they're still developing this system. So it's not like it's being shielded or anything like that. But yet it appears to have all the low-level divergence being favored on the system behind it, even though the convective Kelvin wave is moving from east to west. So that's east to west. So that would most likely make this system stronger, 90% stronger, and then the system behind it is more like the strength of 194E recurves out to sea. So that's a very bizarre phenomenon. And this one then eventually develops two systems behind 94E. So here's 94E, here's the system behind, here's the system behind that. That eventually starts to develop in this European run too. Also not as close to the Mexican coast as some of the European GFS ones have brought the two systems behind 94E into Mexico. I mean, this one may clear up some of the confusion, but it's hard to say. I mean, on first glance, this looks somewhat close to accurately initialized. I mean, it kind of has an area of convection, making it all the way down to 110W, not quite. And keep in mind, there's a 7-hour time difference between the actual supposed initialization. I mean, partially because, and this actual model run, so I mean, that's also can explain some. It also makes even what the European is showing even less excusable, because here's what the European is initializing. It seems to be showing a consolidated disturbance that ends up consolidating and kind of has this area from this tropical wave here and this part of it consolidating together, as I mentioned earlier, into as if it's one system, and it probably isn't, and has a new separate system, which is to its credit, we relatively close to where the 7 hours out, where the ANC is 7 hours later has tagged the system as an invest. But there's other caveats, but it's not quite that simple. Since this is a 7-hour forecast, and the European has brought the westerly periphery of the system to about 110, when the westerly periphery of actual invest 94E seems to be around 103 or 104 west. So there's definitely some sort of initialization error going on. Even if there isn't, it's not like the consolidate. I will say the main reason why I don't think the European, because the system is due to this initialization error. However, I will say the ANC has tagged the system, as I mentioned, at 103 west, which is a little bit further west than I expected. I thought it was going to consolidate a little further east, so we'll see in regards to track. But assuming the system consolidates what I originally expected it to, I think there's a very high likelihood that the system will figure out a way to will be able to find the weakness in the ridge, become a strong hurricane we could have to see. Now, if the system actually consolidates where the European, where the ANC actually currently has pegged the center, any system originating the monsoon troughs in the center formation is likely to be erratic. And you can already see if I showed you the ANC ADCF for Invest 94E, but the center is supposed to be erratic. And even if what the European initialization is correct, then yes, there will be some. The system will still get as strong as I probably illustrated by the GFS most likely. But